What's going on YouTube? Cloverbells here, back with another Series 12 video, and today is February 1st, and you know what that means. Yes, that means Series 12 Rank Ladder is officially live and happening, and you know what that means. All the team building videos that we've been doing in the month of January, now we've turned 5 of them into rental codes. So without wasting any further time, let's just jump into the first rental code. So we're going to be taking a look at this one right here. Alright, this is our Kyogre Zacian squad. So again, this was, I believe, the first one we did, and you know, it looks like it's a relatively standard one, but we've made a couple of changes since then. I believe now we swapped the Lecky for the Zapdos, and you know, Zapdos is an absolute weather killer, especially in the rain and or sun, because in the rain, your Hurricanes are 100% accurate. And also in the sun, you have Max Flare, which is very detrimental to, you know, the Venusaurs, the Groudons, and, you know, they just don't want to take a fire move in the sun. And of course, you have the hyper offensive mode with the Kyogre and the Tornadus. Obviously, you can go for Tailwind and click the funny button known as Water Spout, as we all know and love. Incineroar is just there for, you know, an opposing Zacian matchup, just to cycle your Intimidates and your Fake Outs. And Throat Chop is good for your Calyrex Shadow matchup, so that way you can pin that slot. Amoonguss is still here. I thought about putting Grimmsnarl on the team. I believe you can even put Grimmsnarl in the Tornado slot, but again, with so much Seismitoad and Gastrodon running around, you need to have something to respect it. Otherwise, a team like this can just get bodied by Seismitoad and or Gastrodon. You would have to rely on overpowering those options, but you know, it's just not so great. So this way, with the Amoonguss, you can at least run Giga Drain. Because they are 4 times weak to grass moves. Alright, so this is our first rental code. So now let's just take a look at the Pokepaste and see our EV spreads. Alright, and here's our Pokepaste for our first team. And again, the Tornadus is nothing special. It's just 252, 252 with the Focus Sash. The Zapdos, again, relatively standard with just a tiny bit of bulk for the Life Orb optimization. Our Kyogre in Tailwind will outspeed Regieleki, but it will also outspeed Regieleki Speed Creepers. Again, we put that stat at 140 instead of 139 for that reason. The Incineroar is a little bit more bulkier than what I normally like to do. Normally with the careful spread, I always go with the first EV bump, which is 76. But that's usually because I have a Grimmsnarl on the team. But without no Grimmsnarl, I've decided to make the Incineroar a little bit slower and a little bit bulkier on the special defense side. So this way we can take a little bit more hits when we're cycling Intimidates and our parting shots and our Fake Outs, right? The Zacian is also relatively bulky as well. It's to the second EV bump in the attack stat, with a little bit of weather damage chip with the HP, and then the speed at 187 lets you outspeed Regieleki whether you're at +1 or if their Lecky is at -1 after an Icy Wind proc. Alright, the Amoonguss, again, also relatively standard. HP just to optimize the regenerator bonus that you get when you switch it in and out. The second EV bump in the defense. Actually, we are, yeah, and then the special defense is just leftover EVs, right? And of course, we're 0 speed, so this way we can optimize what we have for Trick Room matchup, right? Most of the stuff is relatively standard, nothing too complicated. I would say this is one of the simpler teams that we have to offer for our 5 rental codes. And if it's someone that's, you know, new to the format or needs to pick up something, I would give them this team, because, you know, Kyogre Zacian is going to be the most used squad, and for good reason, right? It's just so oppressive. Kyogre just does a lot of damage, and typically your Dynamax option is going to be the Zapdos. Alright, and there are some games where you can also max the Kyogre, and then Zacian just comes in from the back and finishes the game. Alright, so that's our first team. Let's move on to the second rental code. Coming in at number 2, this is our Calyrex Groudon squad. Again, I've been a pretty big fan of this one, actually. When we were doing the team building video, I was using Life Orb Calyrex, and I still think that's a great squad. And, you know, my preferred choice is always Life Orb, but for the viewer and for the up-to-date meta, I believe the Focus Sash with the Will-O-Wisp set is the better option to go with at the moment. With Will-O-Wisp, you just cripple those big physical attackers like an opposing Groudon, an opposing Zacian, an opposing Calyrex Ice Rider. And it's just so handy in a lot of situations. And of course, the Focus Sash, you know, you get a second life where something like a Grimmsnarl Sucker Punch or an Yveltal Sucker Punch might pin you. You know, you get that second life and you can get off at least one Astral Barrage or one Will-O-Wisp that could potentially win you the game. All right, Groudon doesn't need any explanation. You know, the reason why Groudon is so good is because it enables its partners like the Venusaur that you see here. Venusaur has a weakness policy item, and always when I like to pair Venusaur and Grimmsnarl together, I like to go weakness policy because behind screens and with the bulk that we have on the Venusaur, any super effective attack Venusaur can calmly take, get a +2 bonus, and then Groudon can come in on switch and give Venusaur that speed boost thanks to the chlorophyll ability. All right, and it's a standard set with Venusaur, you know, nothing too crazy. I believe these four are relatively standard and consistent, so nothing much to say there. The Thundurus is again on the team to 1, give you a max airstream user, and 2, discourage Incineroars on the team, which is something that Groudon and Calyrex Shadow Rider don't want to face. And you know, if Incineroar has to come to pin the Calyrex slot, then you have the Thundurus with a +1 bonus thanks to Defiant, right? And then the good thing about Thundurus is with Crunch as our dark move of choice, you have Max Darkness, which can drop special attacks. Drop special defenses, which can allow Calyrex to come in from the back and finish the game. And what's good about this squad again is when you Dynamax the Venusaur, instead of the Thundurus, you'll chip everything with your G-Max Vine Lash, which makes things a lot easier for Calyrex Shadow Rider to finish the job, right? And then Incineroar is relatively standard again. You need Intimidate, you need Fake Out, you need Throat Chop against the opposing Calyrex. You know, it's great against pretty much a lot of the meta. Incin is the GOAT. All right, so that's our Calyrex Groudon squad. Let's take a look at the EVs real quick. Alright, so here's our EV spread for our Calyrex Groudon team. So again, the Calyrex is nothing crazy. Again, because it's Focus Sash, we're going 252, 252 spread here. The Groudon speed tier just allows it to outspeed opposing Thunduruses after a +1 airstream from your own Thundurus. And then the bulk in the special defense just allows it to take a Water Spout from a Kyogre on switching, where then after, you know, in the sun, and then which allows you to take another one, especially after you get Citrus Berry recovery. So I think that's always nice to have. The Venusaur, this one puts it, this speed tier puts it at 127, which will outspeed base 100s after they get +1 when you're in the sun. So if something like a Zapdos or an opposing Charizard goes for max airstream, you still outspeed it even in the sun. So I think that's always good to have. And of course, we're extra bulky with the weakness policy, with the HP and defense that we have. And you can take a Landorus airstream when you have Reflect Up, so when you're Dynamax, so that's always really, really nice. So this way they can proc your policy, and then you go for hard-hitting G-Max Vine Lashes or +2 Earth Powers or whatnot. And then you always have Weather Ball against opposing Zacians, and they don't want to take Weather Ball in the sun either. The Incineroar, just like I was saying in the Kyogre team that we had, so because we have Grimmsnarl, I've taken a little bit off of the special defense, and I've added it to the speed because, you know, I always like a faster Incineroar because you have a faster Fake Out, that's one thing. You get a faster Throat Chop, which will stop opposing Incineroars going for Parting Shot or Snarl. And then in Trick Room, your Parting Shot goes last. So this way, if they go for Parting Shot and whatever they bring in its place, we'll take your Parting Shot next. So that's always nice for me. All right. And then, of course, the Thundurus. There's some damage calculations with this one. I don't want to get into it in this rental code video. But if you take a look at the team building videos with this one, I've shown the Thundurus calcs here. But again, of course, we're still running max Jolly speed, so this way we don't lose that speed tie. All right, and overall, it's just a bulky Thundurus spread. All right, so let's move on to the next rental code. All right, coming in at number 3, I call this Bacon Dog, but this is Zacian Yveltal. Again, this is a very popular archetype. This duo has already won a couple of tours and some big ones. And again, with Yveltal, you're able to weaken your opponent with things like Snarl and Oblivion Wing and regain health back over time. Zacian just comes in and puts in pressure immediately, especially when you can lead it with something like Grimmsnarl, where you can lead your screens and then put pressure with Zacian on the opposing side, and then just take something out right from the get-go. And of course, you have the speed control move on your Grimmsnarl with Thunder Wave. I always like Scary Face, but I think for the viewer and to provide a little bit more outs to certain situations, you can go Thunder Wave here. The Regieleki also gives you speed control with, you know, Electro Web. It gives you pivot options for Volt Switch, where if you think a Quake is incoming or a ground move, you can always pivot out into your flying types, which is Yveltal or even Landorus. Speaking of Landorus, Life Orb Landorus is just such a killer, especially when paired with Regieleki. You know, you can Dynamax it, which is probably one of your max mons of choice. Go for those hard-hitting max Airstreams, max Quakes, and even max Rock Falls against those annoying Charizards or Rotom Heats. And what's also good is you can Earthquake next to your Yveltal if you need to. So it's always great to have. And then Blastoise here has an interesting set. So, you know, Blastoise can deal damage, but I also wanted to make it usable outside of max, which is why we have Icy Wind instead of something like Ice Beam or Blizzard. Again, just more speed control with this team. And then, you know, when you're Dynamax, you can always go for those hard-hitting G-Max Cannonades, get that chip damage going, and then have Zacian and Yveltal come in from the back and finish the game. You also have Yawn, where you can punish turn 1 Dynamax options from your opponent. And then if you cycle your Blastoise in and out, you can always recycle your Fake Out, which is something that I think the team needs overall, right? So yeah, that's our Yveltal squad. Now let's just take a look at the EV spreads and see what we're calculating for. All right, and here's the EV spreads for our Zacian Yveltal squad. So again, with the Zacian, I think it's the same one from our Kyogre team. Again, you just outspeed Regieleki after a +1 Airstream or a -1 from either an Icy Wind or your own Electro Web. And the Yveltal is max speed as well, and you know, just first bump in the modest natured stat, and then you have HP optimization for Weather Chip. I believe your HP stat is at 223, so that's always a good number to have. And again, you just have an even number in the special defense, so this way you get the best bang for your buck with the Assault Vest. The Landorus is max speed, of course, so this way you don't lose speed ties, and you know, you just have a tiny bit of optimization with the Life Orb, but overall you're still a hard-hitting Landorus. And if the viewer wants, you can go 252, 252, but in this rental code we have just a tiny bit of bulk, just for that reason. The Regieleki is also 252, 252 because we have a Focus Sash. No reason to calculate any bulk there or even optimization. The Blastoise, just to outspeed those base 100 speed creepers with that, and also to outspeed certain Rillabooms that don't want to go for Grassy Glide. But you again have optimization in your HP for the chip, the Hail and Sand chip. And of course, the rest just goes into your special attack stat because we still want Blastoise to deal heavy damage with the G-Max Cannonades and a little bit of damage with the G-Max Hailstorms. Not G-Max, but the Max Hailstorms. The Grimmsnarl spread, again, you know, you're fast enough where... actually, no, this one is calced a little bit differently. I believe this one's Joe's spread, where on Intimidate switch in from your Landorus with the Reflect, you can live as Zacian Behemoth Blade, which I think is always really, really nice. So there's our Grimmsnarl spread, and overall, you know, just relatively standard EVs. Again, all you can see, I'm doing speed tiers first, and then my attack stats, and then a little bit of bulk in the end. So let's move on to the next rental. All right, coming in at number 4, this is actually the Clover Bell's favorite, the Clover Special. This is the Solgaleo Kyogre squad that has done well historically over the years. If you think back to Series 9, I had the same exact build, except I had Metagross instead of Solgaleo, and I think I had the Kingdra in the Kyogre slot. But overall, it just does well for what it's supposed to do. Again, you have the hyper offensive combo with Tornadus and Kyogre. You know, we know what that does, but you also have another strong combo in Tornadus and Solgaleo, where you can proc the weakness policy with Brutal Swing, and then Solgaleo can Dynamax and go for max Steel Spikes and max Quakes, and just dominate the game from there. Our tech choice, the Clover tech on our Solgaleo, is Wild Charge, and it has a lot of purposes. You can snipe opposing Kyogres or any of those big bulky water types like a Blastoise, like a Finny, and then just smash it. But it also can smash, you know, Charizards, especially when you have the speed boost. But the even more important thing is you can set Electric Terrain, which will stop any Yawns shenanigans from a Gastrodon, from a Blastoise, or any sleep stuff from Venusaur or even Amoonguss. And that is the main benefit of having Wild Charge, aka Max Lightning on Solgaleo. Entei here gives you a strong fire type option against Zacians, against Calyrex Ice Riders, and really some teams don't want to face Entei either because Venusaur doesn't want to take a Sacred Fire in the sun, neither does Groudon. And then if you lead with Tornadus, you can always snarl the Charizard before it gets to move, and then you neuter the Charizard, you know, special attack, which it doesn't want. All right, of course you have the Grimmsnarl on the team for extra, you know, bulk and, you know, just overall another way to proc the policy with Sucker Punch on the Solgaleo. Not too many teams would expect it. And you can also pin the Calyrex Shadow Rider, which is something that Solgaleo doesn't want to deal with. So if you can lead Solgaleo, Grimmsnarl, and the opponent leads Calyrex Shadow Rider, if they have a sash, you can still Sucker Punch it and, pin that slot while protecting your Solgaleo at the same time. So yeah, Rillaboom here. So Rillaboom again gives you another option against opposing Kyogres, and it gives you something against those annoying Gastrodons, those annoying Seismitoads. Otherwise, you're gonna have a little bit of a difficult time dealing with those. And Grassy Glide is always good, Fake Out is always good, and I've been running Drum Beating for a long time. I think the tech is still good, but I decided at the last moment to switch to Wood Hammer just because something with Tornadus, Tailwind, and then going for that Wood Hammer. Sometimes Grassy Glide is just not enough, and then Wood Hammer is the key to taking out those mons. All right. So one thing to note is that someone, a viewer, used a very similar version to this one, was inspired by it, and got rank 1 on the ladder. And I'll link that tweet below. But let's take a look at the EV spreads and see what I was looking for. Alright, so for this one, again, this is the same Kyogre that we had in the first rental. Again, we're just outspeeding Regieleki in Tailwind, and we also outspeed Regieleki Speed Creepers, and then the rest just goes into a little bit of bulk. The Solgaleo will outspeed Regieleki as well, but you're not speed tying your Kyogre, so don't worry about that. But this is after Tailwind, of course. No. Actually, I believe this outspeeds Venusaur. That's my mistake. Yeah. So with Tailwind, you outspeed Venusaur by 1. So this way, if they get the Chlorophyll boost and you have Tailwind, you're going to be going first. So this way, you can click your Max Lightning and not fall asleep. All right. The Rillaboom is relatively standard. Again, you're just Adamant Nature 252 with the Miracle Seed. You have HP optimization with your 192 HP stat with this EV investment, and you have a tiny bit of defense bulk, so this way you can live a Zacian Behemoth Blade. All right, and then your speed stat just allows you to outspeed base 100s after a +1, either in Airstream or just overall being +1. All right, Entei. So Entei is relatively standard with just a tiny bit of special defense bulk just to get a little bit more bang for your buck with the Assault Vest, but overall you just have most of your stuff in your attack stat. And again, with speed control with Bulldoze, really nice next to Solgaleo. Also great with Tornadus. All right, and this can also help your Rillaboom in the late game if you need it. And then Sacred Fire is good to punish Zacians, good to punish Groudons, and a lot of the Sun Core like we mentioned. And the Grimmsnarl, more or less the same thing, except the Grimmsnarl this time with Tailwind, now you outspeed base 100s. And then you can go for those fast Spirit Breaks on opposing Zapdos, on opposing Charizard, and just be annoying overall with your screen support. And then you can pin the Calyrex, like I said, with the Sucker Punch, and it also allows you to break the weakness policy on the Solgaleo. So 3 ways to proc the policy on the Solgaleo, which makes the team very flexible overall. And again, your Solgaleo is your primary Dynamax option of choice, and then your Kyogre can come in the back and finish the game, or your Rillaboom and Entei can do that as well. All right, so now let's move on to the final rental code. And this is our final rental code. This is Xerneas Groudon. This is something that I've been using quite a bit, in recent days, just because I think Xerneas has a lot of potential when it's put on the right team, and I think on a Sun team is the way to go, because Xerneas doesn't want to deal with Zacian, right? So what do you have against Zacian? You got a Groudon, you got a Charizard, and you have an Incineroar. 3 things that Zacian doesn't want to deal with. And of course, we have the Indeedee with the Psychic Seeds. This time in the team building video, I put it with Focus Sash, but I decided to go a little bit more bulkier with the Psychic Seeds with our EV spread, and we'll take a look at that in a second. But redirection support for Xerneas is always nice. You can even have Indeedee Groudon as redirection and set up your Swords Dance if you so choose. The Venusaur in this kind of team is a little bit more of a supporting role, which is why I put the Focus Sash on the Venusaur instead. I could have gone modest and go a little bit more bulkier with Koba Berry and make the Venusaur a good Dynamax option, but most games you'll be maxing the Charizard and sometimes the Xerneas, but Zard is your main max option on this team, as is the Groudon, right? So let's take a look at the EV spreads and see how this team functions. Alright, so this is our final rental code with our Xerneas Groudon squad. So again, the Venusaur is nothing special with the 252 Focus Sash. The Indeedee is Bold Nature and is calced to live a Zacian Behemoth Blade, so I think that was worth doing. And we already have a Psychic Seeds boost, so I didn't really felt the need to put that much special defense there. And again, the Charizard is just relatively standard. We do have 4 moves on it. I think that's really necessary in this kind of format. You need the Blast Burn for the G-Max move. It does so much extra damage. The Heat Wave is good outside of Max, which is also really, really nice. You can still KO Zacians. The Air Slash over Hurricane. You can go Hurricane for a little bit more damage than the Dynamax move, but I think Heat Wave, I think Air Slash when you're outside of Max is really, really nice, especially when it gives you a chance for those flinch hacks. Which is great. And then Ancient Power is against the opposing Charizard. Otherwise, you don't really have too much for it other than to rely on Sleep Powders or Groudon's Rock Slide, but Groudon doesn't outspeed it, right? So we need something else a little bit more reliable to have for the opposing Zard. And then the Incineroar is also relatively standard. It's the same kind of Incineroar we've been using. And you've heard me explain it, what it does already. The Xerneas, even though it's modest, doesn't really have any attacks. Special attack. That's because you don't really need it when you're going for +2. Because the idea with this team is after Charizard Dynamaxes and goes for G-Max Wildfire, or even if something like a Venusaur Dynamaxes and goes for G-Max, Vine Lashes, everything is taking chip damage, so nothing is at full health. So that means Xerneas can easily pick up KOs after it sets up his Geomancy in the late game, or even in the early game. If you set up your Geomancy and then just hit things really hard and bring them to red if you don't KO them, then that means Charizard and Venusaur can come in and Dynamax and finish things off with G-Max Vine Lash or G-Max Wildfire. All right, but the main calc here with all that defense investment is you will live a Zacian Behemoth Blade on Intimidate, which I think is really, really helpful overall. So that way you can take one attack and then just go for either a +2 Dazzling Gleam or +2 Moonblast into something. All right, and again, our Groudon, our EVs is the same as the other Groudon team, where we have enough speed to outspeed Thundurus after +1, and to be able to take multiple Kyogre Water Spouts in the rain, especially after your Citrus Berry recovery. So those are all 5 rentals. Let me know which one you're going to try, and let me know which one you're going to use. What do you think of the squads we put out? And hopefully you climb the ladder and you do very well and you reach rank 1 like our friend Philip did. So until then, we'll test all these teams out on rank ladder. So be ready for some cart battles at long last. But also, again, if you're interested in team fixing, which is a tier 2 sub on the channel, this is where you submit a Pokepaste to me and I review it and I optimize the EV spreads, something like this. And then I make a video and then I show you some of the practice battles that we do with it. Or if you're interested in a tier 3 sub, that is team building, where you and we sit in a Discord call and we build a team from scratch and we hash out all the EVs and we also test it out on Showdown and, just give you overall a solid, consistent team. All right. So if you're interested in any of those perks, join the channel, sub, and let me know and message me either on Discord or Twitter. But again, cart battles are coming and we'll bring some collaborations going yet again. I know people have a lot of fun with those. So yeah, lots of good stuff coming on the channel. So until then, have a good one.